In 1973, a research ship called the Glomar Challenger drilled into the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. The scientists were looking for oil. What they found instead was a layer of salt hundreds of meters thick, buried beneath normal ocean sediment. Salt that only forms when a sea completely dries up. The Mediterranean had vanished. And then something refilled it. The question was not how. The question was what happened to everything living there when the water came back. That discovery opened a door to 10 prehistoric disasters so complete, so total, that entire civilizations were erased without a trace. Here is what the scientists found. 5.33 million years ago, the Mediterranean Sea was not a sea. It was a desert, a vast salt-crusted basin stretching from modern Spain to the shores of Lebanon. The Strait of Gibraltar had sealed shut. The Atlantic Ocean could not get in. And for hundreds of thousands of years, the sun baked the Mediterranean floor until nothing remained but salt. Not a thin layer, hundreds of meters thick. Enough salt to cover the entire United States knee-deep. The deepest parts of that basin sat nearly 5 kilometers below the surrounding ocean. A canyon of heat and salt where nothing complex could survive, yet life finds a way. Rivers still flowed into that basin from Europe, Africa, and Asia. The Nile, the Rhone, the Po. They carved canyons through the exposed seabed, canyons deeper than anything on land today. Waterfalls plunged from the continental shelves into the abyss below. And at the edges of that salt desert, small lakes and wetlands supported isolated pockets of life. Fish adapted to brackish water. Plants clung to damp soil. This was not a dead world. It was a strange one, and it was about to be destroyed. In 1973, the scientists aboard the Glomar Challenger did not believe their own data. Salt at the bottom of the Mediterranean meant the sea had dried up. But how could a body of water that large simply vanish? The answer was hiding beneath the waves at Gibraltar, and it would lead them to a flood beyond imagination. The land bridge at Gibraltar was not solid rock. It was a crumbling dam of sediment and stone, holding back the entire Atlantic Ocean. For hundreds of thousands of years it had held, but the Atlantic does not stop pushing. The weight of the sea pressed against that barrier constantly, and around 5.33 million years ago the dam failed, not slowly, not with warning. The breach opened, and the Atlantic fell into the Mediterranean basin. The water did not trickle through. It exploded through. Imagine every fire hose on Earth aimed at the same crack in a wall. Multiply that by 1,000. That was the Zanclean Flood. Geologists Kenneth Shue and William Ryan, the scientist who first pieced this together, calculated the flow. At its peak, 100 million cubic meters of water crashed through Gibraltar every single second. That is 500 times the flow of the Amazon River. The water fell from the Atlantic shelf into the empty basin below, creating a waterfall wider than the entire English Channel. The roar would have been heard hundreds of kilometers away. The mist would have risen like a cloud, and the basin below had no escape. The Mediterranean filled not over thousands of years, not over centuries. In less than 2 years, the entire basin was full. Sea levels rose at rates exceeding 10 meters per day. That is a story a day. Anything living on that basin floor had no warning and nowhere to run. What lived in that dry basin? We will never fully know. The water destroyed almost everything. But the few clues that remain are haunting. Fish fossils found in the deepest parts of the Mediterranean today are not the same species that lived in the Atlantic before the flood. They are different, unique. They evolved in isolation in those salty lakes and brackish wetlands at the bottom of the abyss. For hundreds of thousands of years, life adapted to that alien world. Then, in less than 2 years, the water rose 10 meters every day. The lakes turned to ocean. The wetlands drowned under kilometers of salt water. Those unique species found nowhere else on Earth were erased. The Zanclean Flood did not kill a civilization. Humans did not exist yet. But it destroyed an entire ecosystem that had been evolving for 500,000 years. A world of strange fish, adapted crustaceans, and birds that nested on salt flats that no longer exist. All of it gone. The Mediterranean Sea that we know today, the water that cradled the Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, is not the original sea. It is a replacement. The original Mediterranean was a desert, and the flood that killed it carved a channel on the seafloor that ships sail over today without knowing what lies beneath them. But the Zanclean Flood was not the only time water erased a world. The next disaster happened much closer to our own time, and this time humans were there to witness it. 74,000 years ago, the world was warm. The Ice Age had paused, forests stretched across Asia, rivers ran full and clean, and humans were everywhere, not like today, not billions, but tens of thousands of small families scattered across Africa, India, and China. They had no cities, no writing, no metal tools, but they had something better. They had knowledge. They knew which plants healed, which animals traveled in herds, which caves stayed dry during the rains. They told stories around fires at night. They buried their children with flowers when they died. They had survived everything the earth had thrown at them for 200,000 years. On the island now called Sumatra, a mountain stood silent. It had been quiet for so long that no living human had ever seen it move. The ground around it was green. Rivers flowed from its slopes. Animals grazed on its lower hills. Humans hunted in its shadow without fear. They did not know that beneath that mountain, a chamber of magma the size of a small sea had been filling for 500,000 years. They did not know that the earth was about to open. In 1998, anthropologist Stanley Ambrose would connect this mountain to a mystery hidden inside your own DNA. The mountain did not warn them. No tremors, no smoke, no strange behavior from animals. One morning, the birds sang, the sun rose, the hunters left their camp. And then, without a whisper, the world ended. The explosion was not loud, not at first. It was deeper than sound. A pressure that pushed against every chest within 1,000 kilometers. Then came the light. A flash so bright that witnesses a continent away thought the sun had fallen. The mountain did not erupt, it vanished. The top of Toba collapsed into a hole 100 kilometers long and 30 kilometers wide. Today, that hole is filled by Lake Toba, the largest volcanic lake on Earth. A scar so massive you can see it from space. The magma chamber below emptied itself into the sky in a single terrible minute. The eruption rated an 8 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index. That is the highest possible classification. Mount St. Helens in 1980 was a 5. Toba was 1,000 times more powerful. The ash column rose 50 kilometers high, twice the height of jet planes. It hit the stratosphere and spread sideways like an umbrella of death. Within hours, ash began falling across half the planet. Not gentle ash like from a campfire. This was sharp, heavy, suffocating. It buried forests, choked rivers, collapsed roofs. In India, the ash piled 6 meters deep. That is taller than a 2-story house. Every living thing beneath it died, not slowly, within days. Ash from Toba has been found in sediment cores across the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, and as far west as Lake Malawi in eastern Africa, 7,000 kilometers from the eruption site. But the ash was only the beginning. The real horror was invisible. It was already rising into the stratosphere, and it would not come down for a decade. The sky was about to turn black, and the human species was about to almost disappear. The sulfur dioxide reached the stratosphere, high above the clouds, above the weather, and there it turned into tiny particles that did something terrifying. They reflected sunlight back into space. The sun did not disappear overnight, it dimmed. Slowly at first, then faster. Within months, the sky was the color of old bruises. The temperature dropped. Not by a few degrees, by as much as 15 degrees Celsius in some regions. The growing season vanished. Fruits did not ripen. Grains did not form. Animals starved because the plants they ate had died. And humans, who had survived everything for 200,000 years, began to die too. In 1998, anthropologist Stanley Ambrose published a paper that connected Toba to a mystery geneticists had been puzzling over for years. Human genetic diversity is remarkably low compared to other species. Chimpanzees living in a single forest in Central Africa possess more genetic variation than the entire human population of 8 billion. Something had reduced our species to an extraordinarily small breeding population. Ambrose proposed that Toba was the cause. The genetic evidence suggested something terrifying. The total human breeding population may have fallen to between 3,000 and 10,000 individuals. Not 3,000 in one region. 3,000 total on the entire planet. Every human alive today may descend from a group small enough to fill a single sports stadium. The margin between humanity's survival and its total erasure was thinner than the population of a small town. And some researchers still debate whether Toba was the cause. But the coincidence is impossible to ignore. Not every scientist agrees. Some researchers point to archaeological sites in Africa and India that show human populations persisted through Toba without obvious disruption. Stone tools found above and below the ash layer look the same. The people who made them did not vanish. They adapted. The debate continues in journals and at conferences. Was Toba the single catastrophe that nearly ended us? Or was it just one of several blows that reduced our numbers over time? The answer matters because it changes how we understand ourselves. If Toba alone did this, then one volcano nearly erased humanity. If it was a series of events, then we are survivors of a much longer war. But here's what is not debated. Something reduced human genetic diversity to levels that suggest a catastrophic population crash within the time frame of Toba's eruption. Coincidence is possible, But the alignment between the largest volcanic event in 2 million years and the most severe genetic bottleneck in human history demands more than dismissal. Consider the implication. If the winds had shifted differently, if the eruption had been marginally larger, if those few thousand survivors had been slightly less fortunate, every human being who has ever lived after that point, every civilization, every language, every achievement, none of it would have existed. The entire trajectory of human history balanced on whether a few thousand early humans could survive a sky that had turned to poison. But Toba was not the only disaster waiting in our past. The next ones happened much closer to our own time. And this time, the victims left their tools behind. In 1931, a British fishing trawler called the Kalinda hauled its nets from the North Sea between England and Denmark. The crew expected fish. Instead, tangled in the seaweed and mud, they found something that should not exist 40 meters beneath the surface of the open ocean. A lump of peat, and embedded inside it a barbed antler point, a tool clearly shaped by human hands. The discovery sat in a museum for decades. No one knew what to make of it. How could a hunting tool end up on the floor of the North Sea? The answer would reveal an entire lost country. Archaeologist Clement Reid had proposed in 1913 that a land mass once connected Britain to continental Europe. Most scholars dismissed him. The Kalinda's discovery proved him right. That land is called Doggerland. During the last ice age, sea levels were 120 meters lower than today. The North Sea basin was dry land, a vast plain stretching from eastern England to the Netherlands, Denmark, and beyond. This was not marginal territory, it was prime real estate. Mammoths, giant deer, wild horses, and oxen roamed its grasslands. Rivers full of fish cut through forests of pine and birch, and people lived there, thousands of them, for thousands of years. Recent seismic surveys have revealed the scale of what was lost: river systems, lakes, coastlines, hills. An entire landscape the size of modern Britain sits preserved beneath the cold North Sea water. And the people who called it home had no idea that the ocean was coming for them. The Ice Age ended. The great glaciers across Scandinavia and North America began to melt, and the oceans began to rise. Not quickly at first. Over thousands of years, the water climbed. Doggerland shrank generation by generation. Grandparents told children about forests that had become beaches, about valleys that had become bays. The people adapted. They moved to higher ground. They changed their hunting patterns. They watched the sea creep closer every year. Between approximately 6500 and 6200 BC, the rising water accelerated. The low-lying plains of Doggerland turned into marsh. The marsh turned into open water. Coastlines that had been stable for centuries retreated inland by miles within a single lifetime. The people of Doggerland did not die in one dramatic moment. They retreated. They relocated. They adapted again, and then they retreated some more. Entire networks of settlements, the pathways between them, the burial grounds, the sacred sites, all of it slipped beneath the water. Some made it to higher ground in what became Britain or Scandinavia. Others did not. Their tools, their homes, their dead, all of it now lies beneath 40 meters of cold North Sea water. In 2019, researchers recovered a hand axe dating to approximately 50,000 years ago from sediment pulled from the bottom of the North Sea. Doggerland wasn't just occupied during the final millennia before its flooding. It had been inhabited for tens of thousands of years across multiple human species. But the slow drowning was not the only threat. Something else was coming. A wall of water that would finish what the rising sea started. Approximately 8,150 years ago, off the coast of Norway, a section of the continental shelf the size of Scotland detached from the seabed and slid into the deep ocean. The Storegga Slide displaced roughly 3,500 cubic kilometers of sediment. That is a block of earth 300 kilometers long, 50 kilometers wide, and several hundred meters thick, all of it collapsing into the Norwegian Sea in minutes. The resulting tsunami was unlike anything in recorded human history. Waves reached estimated heights of 25 meters along the coast of Norway. The Shetland Islands, directly in the wave's path, were struck by walls of water that geologists have traced through sediment deposits found 80 meters above modern sea level on some islands. The eastern coast of Scotland received waves estimated at 20 meters or higher. Sand deposits from the Storegga Tsunami have been identified as far inland as 80 kilometers from the modern Scottish coastline, carried there by water that should not have existed that far from the sea. But the most devastating impact was felt somewhere that no longer exists on any map. Doggerland, already diminished by thousands of years of rising sea levels, had been reduced to a low-lying archipelago of islands and marshland. The Mesolithic communities still clinging to these remnants of their once vast homeland had nowhere to run. When the Storegga wave reached Doggerland, 20-meter waves swept across a landscape that barely rose above sea level. The archaeological evidence suggests that whatever remained of human habitation on Doggerland after approximately 6200 BC effectively disappears from the record. The Storegga tsunami did not just flood a coastline. It delivered the killing blow to an already dying landmass. And the most unsettling part? It happened without warning. No earthquake, no strange animal behavior. The ocean floor simply gave way. And minutes later, a wall of water was traveling at 500 kilometers per hour toward shores that had no idea what was coming. In 1997, marine geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman published a hypothesis that would connect ancient geology to humanity's oldest story. Using sonar mapping and sediment cores from the floor of the Black Sea, they proposed that approximately 7,600 years ago, the Mediterranean Sea breached the land barrier at the Bosporus Strait. It poured into what had been a freshwater lake sitting far below modern sea level. The flood was catastrophic, rapid, and devastating to the farming communities that had settled along the lake's fertile shores. Ryan and Pittman suggested this event might be the historical basis for the flood narratives found across the ancient Near East. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of Noah's Ark, the evidence beneath the Black Sea is striking. Sonar surveys have revealed ancient shorelines submerged 150 meters below the current surface. Sediment cores show an abrupt transition from freshwater deposits to marine sediments. A boundary so sharp it suggests the change happened in geological terms almost overnight. Below that boundary, freshwater mollusks. Above it, saltwater species appear suddenly and completely. Something transformed the Black Sea from a freshwater body to a saltwater one in a period too brief for gradual transition. Ryan and Pittman's models estimated the flood's intensity at approximately 200 times the flow rate of Niagara Falls. Saltwater cascaded through the Bosporus Channel with enough force to cut a gorge still visible in bathymetric surveys today. The lake's surface rose by as much as 15 centimeters per day. Shorelines retreated by over a kilometer daily in the flat northern sections of the basin. Within months, an area roughly the size of Ireland was submerged. Farming communities that had cultivated the lakeshore for generations watched the water advance toward their fields, their homes, their burial grounds, with no way to stop it. And the archaeological record from those settlements is buried under 150 meters of salt water. We will never fully know what was lost. In 2000, underwater explorer Robert Ballard, famous for discovering the wreck of the Titanic, conducted expeditions to the Black Sea floor. He reported finding evidence of ancient shorelines and possible man-made structures preserved in the anoxic deep water. The Black Sea's unique chemistry is what makes this possible. Its deep layers contain almost no dissolved oxygen. Organic material that falls to the bottom does not decompose normally. Wooden structures and biological machines that would have disintegrated millennia ago in any other body of water might still exist in the darkness 150 meters down. Perfectly preserved, beyond practical excavation. The debate over the Black Sea deluge's speed and scale continues. Some geologists argue the flooding was more gradual, occurring over thousands of years rather than months. But what remains undisputed is the fundamental event. The Black Sea was once a smaller, lower freshwater body. It became a larger, higher saltwater sea. People lived on the shores that are now submerged. And the cultural memory of a catastrophic flood persists across every civilization that emerged in the surrounding region. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written in Mesopotamia over 4,000 years ago, describes a flood sent by angry gods that destroyed all humanity except for a single righteous man and his family. The biblical account of Noah echoes the same story with different names. The Greeks had Deucalion. The Hindus had Manu. Whatever those original Black Sea communities built, whatever they believed, whatever they understood about their world, the water took it all, and all that remains is a story, passed down for 300 generations, a memory of drowning that we still tell our children today. In 2006, a team of researchers led by geologist Matthew Schuster published findings from satellite imagery and field surveys across the southern Sahara. They confirmed something geologists had suspected for decades. The largest desert on Earth was once green, not marginally vegetated, not dotted with scattered oases, green, covered in grasslands, forests, rivers, and at its center, a body of fresh water so vast it dwarfed any lake currently existing on the planet. Lake Megachad. At its maximum extent roughly 7,000 years ago, it covered an estimated 400,000 square kilometers. That is larger than the modern Caspian Sea, larger than Germany. a freshwater inland sea stretching across what is now some of the most barren, uninhabitable terrain on Earth. The evidence is written into the landscape itself. Satellite imagery reveals ancient shorelines and lake sediment deposits hundreds of kilometers from the nearest modern water source. Fossilized pollen shows grassland and woodland species that now exist only in tropical Central Africa. Rock art in the Tassili Niger Plateau of southern Algeria, first documented by French explorer Henri Lot in 1956, depicts hippos, crocodiles, giraffes, and cattle herders in landscapes that are now waterless sand. People did not just pass through the Sahara, they lived there, they farmed there. They built communities around a lake the size of a small ocean. Between approximately 5000 and 3000 BC, this world collapsed. Earth's axial tilt and orbital precession gradually shifted the position of the West African monsoon. The seasonal rain belt that had sustained the Green Sahara for thousands of years retreated southward. Rainfall declined, Lake Megachad began to shrink, grasslands receded. Rivers dried to seasonal trickles, then vanished entirely. And the people who had called this green paradise home for thousands of years were forced to make a choice: stay and die, or leave everything they had ever known. Climate models suggest the transition involved tipping points. Small decreases in rainfall triggered disproportionate vegetation loss. Vegetation loss reduced moisture recycling. Less moisture recycling decreased rainfall further, a feedback loop that accelerated the drying far beyond what orbital forcing alone would predict. Core samples from Lake Yoa in northern Chad, published by Stefan Kruppelin in Science in 2008, suggest the transition from green Sahara to full desert occurred over approximately 1,000 to 2,000 years. For the human communities living through it, this was a slow strangulation. Each generation inherited a world slightly drier, slightly harsher, slightly less habitable than the one before. The migrations triggered by this collapse may have shaped the foundations of recorded history. As the Sahara dried, populations concentrated along remaining water sources, particularly the Nile Valley. Some archaeologists, including Fekri Hassan at University College London, have proposed that the influx of Saharan refugees into the Nile corridor provided the population density and agricultural knowledge that catalyzed the emergence of Egyptian civilization. The pyramids, the pharaohs, the hieroglyphs, the entire cultural legacy of ancient Egypt. All of it may exist because a lake larger than Germany evaporated and forced its inhabitants to crowd along the only river that still flowed. The Sahara didn't die from a single catastrophe. It died from a slow withdrawal of the conditions that sustained it. And the millions of people who called it home didn't perish in a single moment of destruction. They walked away generation by generation, carrying whatever they could toward water that still existed. Behind them, the greatest freshwater lake the world had ever seen shrank to a fraction of its former self. Modern Lake Chad covers barely 1,500 square kilometers. The ancient shorelines of its predecessor stretch across a desert that remembers nothing of the world it used to be. In 1967, archaeologist Spyridon Marinatos began excavations at Akrotiri on the southern tip of the Greek island of Santorini. What he uncovered beneath meters of volcanic ash was extraordinary. A complete Bronze Age city preserved like Pompeii, multi-story buildings, sophisticated drainage systems, frescoes of astonishing artistry. The city had been frozen in time by a volcanic eruption so powerful it reshaped the geography of the eastern Mediterranean. Approximately 3,600 years ago, the volcano that formed Santorini, known to geologists as Thera, detonated in one of the most violent eruptions of the last 10,000 years. The eruption expelled an estimated 60 cubic kilometers of material, 4 times the volume ejected by Krakatoa in 1883. The explosion collapsed the center of the island into the sea, creating the distinctive caldera that defines Santorini's crescent shape today. The volcanic explosivity index rates the Thera eruption at 7, placing it among the most powerful volcanic events in recorded geological history. Ash deposits have been identified in sediment cores from the Nile Delta, the eastern Mediterranean seabed, and ice cores from Greenland over 4,000 kilometers away. The immediate blast obliterated the island settlements. Akrotiri miraculously shows no human remains, suggesting the population evacuated before the final cataclysm, likely warned by preliminary seismic activity. But evacuation from the island did not mean survival. The eruption generated tsunamis that radiated across the eastern Mediterranean. Wave height estimates vary, but models published by tsunami geologist Kostas Sinolakis suggest waves of 9 to 15 meters struck the northern coast of Crete, just 110 kilometers to the south, within 30 minutes of the caldera collapse. Crete was the heart of the Minoan civilization, the first advanced civilized civilization in European history. The Minoans had built palace complexes at Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros. They possessed a written language, maintained trade networks spanning the eastern Mediterranean, created art that wouldn't be matched in Europe for 1,000 years. And in a single afternoon, their fleet was crippled. Their coastal settlements were wrecked. Their civilization was dealt a blow from which it would never recover. In 2007, nuclear physicist Richard Firestone and a team of 25 researchers published a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences proposing something extraordinary. Approximately 12,800 years ago, at the exact moment the Earth was emerging from the last ice age, something struck. A comet or asteroid, possibly fragmenting upon atmospheric entry, detonated over the Laurentide ice sheet covering North America. The resulting airburst triggered a cascade of destruction that sent the planet plunging back into ice age conditions for over 1,000 years. This period is called the Younger Dryas, and its onset represents one of the most abrupt climate reversals in the geological record. The evidence is embedded in a thin geological layer found at over 50 sites across 4 continents. This Younger Dryas boundary layer contains nanodiamonds, materials that form only under extreme temperatures and pressures consistent with cosmic impact. It contains microspherules, tiny glass beads created when rock melts and resolidifies midair. It contains elevated concentrations of iridium and platinum, elements rare on Earth's surface but common in extraterrestrial objects. And at several North American sites, the boundary layer contains carbon-rich black matte sediment consistent with continent-wide wildfires. The climate data is stark. Greenland ice cores show temperatures in the North Atlantic region dropped by approximately 7 degrees Celsius within decades. The warm interglacial period that had been melting glaciers reversed almost overnight. Ice sheets stabilized or began advancing again. The warming that should have continued for thousands of years simply stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch. And what disappeared during this period is even more disturbing. The Clovis culture, one of the earliest well-documented human populations in North America, vanishes from the archaeological record precisely at the Younger Dryas boundary. Their distinctive fluted spear points, found across the continent in earlier sediment layers, simply stop appearing. Simultaneously, North America experienced a megafaunal extinction of staggering proportions. Mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, American camels, American horses, dire wolves. Dozens of species that had survived multiple ice ages vanished within a narrow window. In total, approximately 35 genera of large mammals went extinct in the Americas, during or immediately after the Younger Dryas onset. The impact hypothesis remains fiercely debated. Critics argue the nanodiamonds could have alternative origins, that the extinctions were caused by human overhunting, that the climate reversal was triggered by meltwater disruption of ocean currents rather than cosmic impact. But the coincidence is staggering. At precisely 12,800 years ago, temperatures collapsed, continent-wide fires erupted, a sophisticated human culture disappeared, and dozens of megafaunal species went extinct simultaneously. Whether the cause was a comet, meltwater, or something else entirely, the event itself is undeniable. A world was ending. If a cosmic impact triggered the Younger Dryas, it means that approximately 12,800 years ago, the trajectory of human civilization was fundamentally altered by an object from space. The Clovis people who had colonized an entire continent were erased. Whatever civilizations might have emerged from their expansion across the Americas, none of it materialized. The survivors started over in a world that had reverted to ice age conditions, surrounded by the bones of species that would never walk the Earth again. But the Younger Dryas was not the last time the climate turned against us. The most devastating event happened much closer to our own time, when we had already built cities, when we had already invented writing, when we thought we were safe. In 1993, geologist Harvey Weiss at Yale University published a paper in Science that connected a single climatic event to the simultaneous collapse of multiple civilizations across 3 continents. His excavations at Tel Leilan in northeastern Syria had revealed something troubling. A thriving urban center, part of the Akkadian Empire, the world's first true empire, had been abruptly abandoned around 2200 BC. The soil layers told the story. Beneath the abandonment horizon lay the remains of a prosperous city. Above it, centuries of wind-blown dust and sand. No destruction by war, no evidence of plague. The inhabitants simply left, and the desert moved in. What Weiss proposed was radical. The Akkadian Empire, founded by Sargon of Akkad around 2334 BC and stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, did not fall to invasion or internal revolt. It was destroyed by drought. A severe aridification event, beginning around 2200 BC, turned the fertile agricultural heartland of northern Mesopotamia into dust. The cities that depended on rain-fed agriculture could no longer produce food. Populations fled southward toward irrigated lands along the Tigris and Euphrates, creating refugee crises that overwhelmed remaining infrastructure. The empire fragmented. Within decades, the most powerful political entity the world had ever seen had ceased to exist. But the Akkadian collapse was only one piece of the catastrophe. Marine sediment cores from the Gulf of Oman show a dramatic spike in wind-blown dust at precisely this period. Speleothem records from caves in Israel, China, and Italy confirm a sharp reduction in rainfall spanning several centuries. Something disrupted global precipitation patterns on a scale that affected civilizations separated by thousands of kilometers. In Egypt, the Old Kingdom collapsed. The pharaohs who built the Great Pyramids of Giza, who had maintained centralized authority for nearly 1,000 years, lost control. The Nile's annual floods, the foundation of Egyptian agriculture, diminished catastrophically. Anktifi, a provincial governor who lived during the collapse, left inscriptions describing conditions where the entire south was dying of hunger. The Old Kingdom fractured into competing provincial authorities during the First Intermediate Period, a century of chaos that Egyptians would remember as a dark age for millennia afterward. Simultaneously, 4,000 kilometers to the east, the Indus Valley civilization was collapsing. The great cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, home to an estimated 5 million people across the Indus Plain, entered terminal decline. The Ghaggar-Hakra river system weakened as monsoon patterns shifted, urban populations dispersed. Within 2 centuries, the cities were abandoned. One of the 3 cradles of human civilization simply dissolved. In China, historical records describe the Great Flood of Gunyu, a period of catastrophic environmental instability roughly contemporaneous with the 4.2 kiloyear event. While the Chinese experience may have involved flooding rather than drought, the underlying cause, disrupted atmospheric circulation patterns, produced devastating consequences, regardless of local manifestation. What makes the 4.2 kiloyear event the most terrifying entry on this list isn't its death toll, though its death toll was staggering. It is the pattern it reveals. A single climatic shift simultaneously destroyed civilizations that had no knowledge of each other's existence. The Akkadians didn't know about the Egyptian suffering. The Egyptians had no concept of the Indus Valley's collapse. Each civilization experienced its destruction as local and incomprehensible. None of them understood that the same force was dismantling human achievement across the entire world simultaneously. The 4.2 kiloyear event lasted approximately 200 to 300 years. It wasn't a single bad season or a decade of hardship. It was centuries of diminished rainfall, failed harvests, and collapsing social order. Civilizations that had taken 1,000 years to build were erased in generations. The drought ended. Civilizations eventually rebuilt. But the 4.2 kiloyear event stands as evidence that the Earth's climate does not negotiate with human ambition. It doesn't care how sophisticated your irrigation systems are or how permanent your monuments appear. A shift in atmospheric circulations lasting a few centuries was enough to simultaneously erase the most advanced civilizations on 3 continents. And the mechanisms that drove it could activate again. For reasons we may not recognize until the damage is already irreversible, the past is not dead. It is not even past. The same forces that drowned Doggerland, that triggered the younger Dryas, that collapsed the Bronze Age, are still active. The volcanoes are still sleeping. The comets are still out there. The climate is still shifting. We are not the first advanced civilization to believe our world is permanent. We are just the ones who have been warned. You have just spent nearly 90 months looking through the worst moments in Earth's history. 10 disasters, each one powerful enough to erase civilizations. Each one leaving behind only fragments for scientists to find decades or centuries later. The Zanclean Flood that drowned an entire sea. Toba that reduced humanity to a few thousand survivors. Doggerland that sank beneath the North Sea. The Storegga wave that finished what the rising water started. The Black Sea Deluge that became the oldest story ever told. Lake Megachad that turned a green paradise into the largest desert on Earth. The Toba Eruption that killed Europe's first civilization. The younger Dryas comet that set a continent on fire. And the 4.2 kiloyear event that simultaneously destroyed 3 Bronze Age empires. Each one of these disasters was real. Each one was catastrophic. And each one was eventually forgotten. The people who lived through them did not have historians. They did not have cameras. They had memory. Oral tradition passed from grandparents to grandchildren, and even that faded. The Zanclean Flood happened so long ago that no human witnessed it. Doggerland's drowning happened so recently that fishing boats still pull up human bones. But the survivors eventually died. Their children moved on. Their grandchildren forgot. And the world moved on without remembering what had been lost. But here is the question this video cannot answer for you. How many other disasters have we already forgotten? How many civilizations lie buried beneath our feet, waiting for a research ship or a construction crew to accidentally find them? Archaeologists call it the invisible past. The idea that what we have found is a tiny fraction of what existed. The vast majority of human history has left no trace. Wooden structures rot. Leather and cloth decay, bones crumble to dust. Entire cities built from mud brick have been erased so completely that we only know they existed because their foundations disturbed the soil. The people of Doggerland built their homes from wood and thatch. Nothing remains. The fishing boats that pulled up antler points and hand axes did not find houses. They did not find villages. They found the hardest, most durable objects. The things that could survive 8,000 years underwater. Everything else is gone. Consider the Black Sea. Its deep anoxic waters may hold perfectly preserved wooden structures, organic materials that would have disintegrated anywhere else. But we cannot reach them. They sit 150 meters below the surface, beyond practical excavation for now. Somewhere down there, in the cold darkness, lies the physical evidence of a people who watched the water rise. Their homes, their tools, their possessions, they're dead. All of it preserved in oxygen-free mud, and all of it inaccessible. The same is true for the Mediterranean. The Zanclean Flood destroyed an entire ecosystem. We have fish fossils, we have salt deposits. We have no idea what else lived in that dry basin. The water erased it so completely that we cannot even name the species that died there. Every year, new discoveries change what we thought we knew. A hand axe pulled from the North Sea, a layer of nanodiamonds in a cliff face, a sediment core that shows a drought lasting 3 centuries. The past is not fixed. It is being rewritten constantly, and what we do not know still dwarfs what we do. Let us talk about the threats we know about but do nothing about. Yellowstone, the supervolcano beneath America's most famous national park. It erupts roughly every 600,000 years. The last eruption was 640,000 years ago. We are overdue, not by a little, by 40,000 years. When Yellowstone erupts again, it will bury half of North America in ash. The rest of the world will freeze. Famine will be global. And there is nothing we can do to stop it. The Campi Flegrei volcano in Italy, the same one that erupted 39,000 years ago, is still active. Scientists monitor it constantly because they know it could erupt again. The ground around Naples rises and falls with the pressure of magma beneath it. Thousands of people live inside the caldera. They have no evacuation plan that would work on short notice. The Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of the Pacific Northwest produces a magnitude 9 earthquake every 300 years on average. The last one was in 1700, that was 324 years ago. When it goes, Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver will be destroyed in minutes. The tsunami will cross the ocean and hit Japan. The region has building codes. It has warning systems. It does not have a culture of preparedness. Most people living there do not know they are in a tsunami zone. The Tohoku Fault off the coast of Japan produces a massive earthquake every 400 to 600 years. The last one was in 2011. That one killed 20,000 people and caused a nuclear meltdown. The next one could be worse. We know these things. We have maps, models, warning systems. But we do not prepare, because preparing is expensive, because preparing is scary, because we would rather believe it will not happen in our lifetime. The people of Pompeii believe the same thing. Here is something that should keep you awake. NASA has identified only about 40% of near-Earth objects larger than 140 meters. Objects big enough to destroy a city, objects that could hit us with no warning. The Chelyabinsk meteor that exploded over Russia in 2013 was only 20 meters across. It injured 1,500 people. It broke windows in 6 cities. It was not detected before it entered the atmosphere. Imagine if it had been larger. Imagine if it had been the size of the younger Dryas comet. Imagine if it hit New York instead of open ocean. The dinosaurs did not see the asteroid that killed them. They had no warning, no evacuation plan, no backup. Neither do we. We have telescopes, we have computer models. We have brilliant scientists tracking the sky every night. But space is big, really big, and comets are dark. Some of them we will not see until they are months away. Some of them we will not see until they hit. The younger Dryas impact hypothesis remains debated, partly because we have not found a crater. A comet that size should leave a hole, but if it exploded over the ice sheet, the crater might be buried under kilometers of ice that have since melted and reformed. We may never find it. The next comet could be on the same trajectory. We would not know until the sky lit up. The next great extinction could already be on its way. It could be a decade out, a year out, a day out. We would not know until it was too late. But let us stop looking at the sky for a moment. Let us look at each other. Because the most likely catastrophe is not a volcano or a comet. It is us. Nuclear war, engineered pandemics, uncontrolled artificial intelligence, climate collapse. These are not science fiction. These are active risks that experts have been warning about for decades. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists maintains the doomsday clock. It represents how close humanity is to destroying itself. Right now, it is set at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been. Closer than during the Cold War. Closer than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have normalized this. We scroll past headlines about nuclear posturing and climate tipping points like they are sports scores. We have accepted a 90 seconds to midnight world as normal. It is not normal. It is insane. The people of the Green Sahara did not see their drought coming. We see ours coming. We just refuse to look. The difference between the 4.2 kiloyear event and tomorrow is awareness. The Bronze Age civilizations did not know why their crops failed. They did not have satellites. They did not have climate models. They prayed to gods who did not answer. We have no excuse. We know exactly what is happening. We have known for decades, and we have done almost nothing. The difference between survival and extinction is not ability. It is will, and our will is failing. This is not a political video. This is not a lecture. This is a survival guide. And here is the first rule of survival. Do not panic. Panic kills faster than any disaster. The people who survived Toba did not panic. They assessed. They adapted. They acted. You can do the same. Start small. Learn one skill this week. How to find water. How to start a fire without a lighter. How to treat a wound. One skill. Practice it until it becomes automatic. Then learn another. Build a community. The survivors of every catastrophe had one thing in common. They were not alone. They had people they trusted. People who shared food, shared shelter, shared information. Isolation is death. Connection is survival. Talk to your neighbors. Join a local group. Know who you would call and where you would go if the lights went out tonight. The second rule of survival is more uncomfortable. Accept that you might have to do things you never imagined. The people of Doggerland did not want to leave their homes. They left anyway. Because staying meant death. The people of the Green Sahara did not want to abandon their lake. They walked away anyway, because the water was not coming back. The people of the Indus Valley did not want to watch their cities crumble. They dispersed anyway, because the monsoon had shifted. Survival is not about being comfortable. It is about being alive. The third rule of survival is the hardest. Accept that you might not survive. Not every catastrophe has a happy ending. Some of the disasters in this video killed everyone. Entire civilizations erased. No survivors, no descendants, no one to tell their story. That could be us. That is the truth that our ancestors understood and we have forgotten. The survivors of the 8.2 kiloyear event did not give up when their crops failed. They invented irrigation. The survivors of the Sahara Eruption did not curse the sky when the ash fell. They evacuated. The survivors of Toba did not sit down and wait to die. They kept walking. The mindset that saved them is available to you. It is called anti-fragility, not just surviving. Growing stronger because of the stress. Learning from the disaster. Adapting. Our ancestors were anti-fragile. Every catastrophe made them better, harder, smarter. That is why we are here. But modern life has made us fragile. We expect comfort, predictability, safety. We get anxious when our internet slows down. We get angry when the grocery store is out of our favorite brand. We have forgotten what real danger feels like, and that forgetting is itself a danger. The next catastrophe will separate the fragile from the anti-fragile. Which one will you be? The people who survived the 4.2 kiloyear event were not the ones with the biggest cities. They were not the ones with the strongest armies. They were the ones who adapted, who moved, who changed. The ones who let go of the world they knew and built something new from the ruins. The Akkadian Empire collapsed. Egypt fell into chaos. The Indus cities emptied. But humans did not go extinct. The survivors learned. They built new civilizations. They told stories about what had happened. And they passed down the warning we have forgotten. Before we close, I want you to do something. Stop reading for a moment. Look around your room, your house, your street. Ask yourself 3 questions. First, if you had to leave your home in 5 minutes, what would you take? Not what you would want to take, what you would actually grab. Second, if the power went out for a month, would you have enough food and water? Be honest. Third, who would you call? Who would call you? Survival is not individual. It is social. If you do not have answers to these questions, you have work to do. Do not feel bad about that. Our ancestors did not know how to survive until they learned. You can learn too. Start tonight. Make a list, buy a water filter, take a first aid class, talk to your neighbor. Small actions. Consistent actions. The thread of human survival is woven from millions of small actions. Add your thread. And here is the most important thing. Do not wait. The people of Pompeii did not think the volcano would erupt. It did. The people of New Orleans did not think the levees would fail. They did. The people of Doggerland did not think the sea would swallow their island. It did. The next disaster is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And when it comes, the people who survive will not be the richest or the strongest. They will be the ones who paid attention. The next video is already being written. It is about the near misses, the catastrophes that almost happened but did not. In 2012, a solar storm missed Earth by 9 days. If it had hit, it would have fried every electrical grid on the planet. No power, no water, no internet, no hospitals, no food deliveries. The modern world would have collapsed in a matter of weeks. And the storm was completely natural, completely unpredictable, completely survivable if you knew what to do. Most people would not have known. That video will teach you. It will teach you what to stock, what to learn, who to trust. In 2013, a 20-meter meteor exploded over Russia without warning. The same year, a 400-meter asteroid passed between the Earth and the Moon. We discovered it 3 days after it passed. In 1991, a nuclear false alarm in Russia nearly triggered a retaliatory strike. One man, Stanislav Petrov, decided to disobey orders and wait. He was right. The alarm was a malfunction. One man saved the world. There are hundreds of these stories. Near misses that could have ended everything. You have never heard most of them. That is going to change. Subscribe if you want to stay awake. Hit the bell if you want to be ready. Because the next near miss might not miss. And the only thing that has ever saved us is paying attention. The Zanclean Flood refilled the Mediterranean in less than 2 years. The Toba Eruption reduced humanity to a few thousand survivors. Doggerland drowned beneath the North Sea. The Storegga wave finished what the water started. The Black Sea Deluge became the oldest story ever told. Lake Megachad turned a green paradise into the largest desert on Earth. The Sahara Eruption killed Europe's first civilization. The younger Dryas comet set a continent on fire. The 4.2 kiloyear event destroyed 3 Bronze Age empires simultaneously, 10 disasters. Each one powerful enough to erase everything. Each one leaving behind only fragments for scientists to find centuries later. The people who lived through them did not have historians. They did not have cameras. They had memory, and even that faded. The survivors eventually died. Their children moved on. Their grandchildren forgot. And the world moved on without remembering what had been lost. We are not the first advanced civilization to believe our world is permanent. We are just the ones who have been warned. The past is not dead. It is not even past. The same forces that drowned Doggerland, that triggered the younger Dryas, that collapsed the Bronze Age, are still active. The volcanoes are still sleeping. The comets are still out there. The climate is still shifting. The question is not whether another disaster will come. The question is whether we will be ready when it does. The sky turned black on a Tuesday. Not that they had names for days yet, but it happened suddenly, and it will happen again. The only difference is this time, we have no excuse to say we did not know. Step back from the individual disasters. Look at the pattern that connects them. The Zanclean Flood. Toba, Doggerland, Storegga, the Black Sea, Lake Megachad, Thera, Younger Dryas. The 4.2 kiloyear event. 9 catastrophes, each one different, each one devastating. But all of them share a hidden structure that no one talks about. First, stability. A long period where everything works. The Mediterranean basin is dry but stable. Doggerland is wet but stable. The Sahara is green and stable. The Bronze Age empires are prosperous and stable. Second, a trigger. A land bridge fails. A volcano erupts, an ice dam collapses, a comet arrives, a monsoon shifts, something breaks. Third, collapse. Not slow, not gentle. Fast, unforgiving. The water rises, the sky darkens. The crops fail, the city's empty. Fourth, forgetting. Within a few generations, the survivors have moved on. The stories become myths. The myths become legends. The legends become forgotten. We are living in the stability phase right now. The world is warm. The seas are high but stable. The crops grow. The cities are full. We assume this will last forever. That is what every civilization before us assumed. The people of Akkad assumed their empire would last forever. The people of the Green Sahara assumed their lake would never dry. The people of Doggerland assumed the sea would stop rising. They were all wrong. And we have no reason to believe we are special. The pattern is not complete. We are still in the stability phase. But the trigger could come at any moment. And when it comes, the collapse will be faster than anyone expects. Why do we forget? It is not just time, it is psychology. Humans are not good at holding on to collective trauma. After a disaster, the survivors are hyper-aware. They watch the horizon. They prepare for the next blow. But their children? Their children grew up in the aftermath. They heard the stories, they saw the scars. They were cautious. But their grandchildren? The grandchildren never experienced the disaster. They only heard stories about it. Stories become less vivid with each retelling. By the 4th generation, the disaster is a legend. By the 10th generation, it is a myth. By the 20th generation, it is forgotten entirely. This is not weakness. This is how human memory works. We are designed to forget pain. It helps us keep living, but forgetting has a cost. The people who rebuilt after the 4.2 kiloyear event did not remember why their ancestors had collapsed. They built new cities in the same places. They farmed the same fields. They assumed the drought would not return. They were right. The drought did not return. But another disaster did. The Bronze Age collapse, the Iron Age collapse, the fall of Rome, the Black Death. Each generation forgets the last catastrophe. Each generation assumes they are safe, and each generation is wrong. The 4.2 kiloyear event was erased from history for over 4,000 years. We only rediscovered it in 1993. That is how complete the forgetting can be. An entire global catastrophe, forgotten until geologists dug it up. Let us talk about the people who made it through, not the ones who died, the ones who lived. After Toba, a few thousand humans survived. They did not have generals. They did not have kings. They had mothers and fathers who found food when there was no food, who made fire when the sky was dark, who held dying children and kept walking. Their names are lost. Their faces are unknown. Their stories were never written down. But they are the reason you exist. After the 4.2 kiloyear event, the survivors of the Akkadian Empire did not rebuild Akkad. They scattered. Some went north, some went east. Some became farmers again. Some became herders. They adapted. They changed. They let go of the world they knew and built something new. The survivors of the Toba Eruption did not try to rebuild on Santorini. The island was gone. They resettled elsewhere. They joined other communities. Their children married into new families. Their language disappeared, their gods were forgotten, but their genes survived. Their knowledge of sailing, their understanding of the sea, it got passed down, it got absorbed. It became part of something else. This is how survival works. It is not about preserving the past exactly as it was. It is about carrying forward whatever can be carried, letting go of the rest. The people of Doggerland did not leave behind a single written word. They left behind stone tools and fishing nets. They left behind bones in the mud. They left behind a warning: the sea can rise, the land can vanish, and no one will remember you if you do not survive. The survivors of every catastrophe on this list knew 3 things that we have forgotten. First, they knew that stability is temporary. They did not assume tomorrow would look like today. They watched the sky, they watched the water, they watched the animals, they paid attention. Second, they knew that community is survival. No one survived Toba alone. No one outran the Storegga wave by themselves. They had people they trusted, people who shared food, shared shelter, shared information. Isolation was death, connection was life. Third, they knew that adaptation is more important than strength. The strongest people of Doggerland died. The ones who survived were not the strongest. They were the most flexible. The ones who saw the water rising and walked away. The ones who let go of their homes and their fields and their dead. The ones who started over. We have forgotten these things. We have replaced them with myths. The myth of individual survival. The myth of technology as salvation. The myth that we are different from our ancestors. The truth is harsher. We are not different. We are the same species that almost went extinct at Toba. We have the same brains, the same fears, the same capacity for denial. The only difference is that our ancestors had practice. They had lived through catastrophes before. They knew how to adapt. We have had 8,000 years of relative stability. We have forgotten how to survive. The next catastrophe will not ask us if we are ready. It will not wait for us to remember. It will arrive. And the only thing that will matter is whether we learned the lessons our ancestors tried to teach us. Let us name the blind spots. First, infrastructure. Modern cities depend on systems that no single person understands. Electricity grids, water treatment plants, internet cables, supply chains. One solar storm, like the Carrington event of 1859, would fry every transformer on the planet. The lights would go out. The pumps would stop. The trucks would not deliver food. Within weeks, cities would become death traps. We know this. We have known it for decades. We have done almost nothing. Second, food. The average grocery store has 3 days of food on its shelves. 3 days. After that, nothing. The average American household has less than 2 weeks of food stored. In a real catastrophe, the supermarkets would empty in hours, not days, hours. Third, medicine. Modern antibiotics, vaccines, insulin, dialysis, these are not optional. Millions of people would die within months if supply chains failed. We have no backup plan. Fourth, information. We trust our phones, our internet, our news. In a catastrophe, all of it could disappear. The people who survive will be the ones who know things, not the ones who can look things up, the ones who already know. Fifth, denial, the biggest blind spot. We refuse to think about these things because thinking about them is uncomfortable. We would rather watch entertainment, scroll social media, argue about politics, anything except confront the truth. The truth is that we are not prepared, and we are not preparing. The people of Pompeii had the same blind spots. They saw the smoke. They felt the tremors. They told themselves it was normal. They stayed. They died. We are not smarter than the people of Pompeii. We just have better entertainment. Here is a thought experiment. Imagine the power goes out tonight, not in your neighborhood. In the entire region, no lights, no heat, no refrigeration, no gas pumps, no ATMs, no internet, no cell phones, for 1 month. What do you do tomorrow morning? Do you have water stored? Do you have food that does not need cooking? Do you have a way to defend your home? Do you have neighbors you trust? Do you have skills that would be useful? If you answered no to any of these questions, you are not prepared. That is not a judgment. It is an observation. Most people are not prepared. The question is whether you want to stay that way. Resilience is not about fear. It is about freedom. The more prepared you are, the less you have to panic. The less you have to panic, the better decisions you make. The better decisions you make, the more likely you are to survive. It is a positive feedback loop. Preparation reduces fear. Reduced fear enables clear thinking. Clear thinking enables survival. The opposite is also true. Denial increases fear when disaster strikes. Fear impairs judgment. Impaired judgment leads to bad decisions. Bad decisions lead to death. The choice is yours. The people who survived the 8.2 kiloyear event were not the ones with the most grain stored. They were the ones who saw the drought coming and started digging canals before their neighbors did. Preparation is not about having things. It is about seeing clearly. Every survival expert agrees on one thing. The most important survival tool is not a knife. It is not a water filter. It is not a firearm. It is other people. The survivors of Toba did not have stockpiles. They had each other. The survivors of the Storegga wave did not have bunkers. They had high ground and neighbors who helped them reach it. The survivors of the 4.2 kiloyear event did not have canned food. They had social networks that shared information about where the water still flowed. Community is survival, not because people are nice, because people are useful. Different people know different things. Different people have different skills. Different people can do different jobs. Alone, you can carry one load. Together, you can carry a village. This is the part that modern preppers often miss. They buy guns. They buy freeze-dried food. They buy generators. They do not build relationships. They do not talk to their neighbors. They do not share skills. They prepare to be alone. That is a mistake. The people who survived the Bronze Age collapse were not the ones who hid in the hills with supplies. They were the ones who formed new communities, who shared water sources, who traded knowledge for protection, who adapted. Isolation is death. Connection is survival. That was true 10,000 years ago. It is still true today. Do you know your neighbors? Not their names, their skills. Who has medical training? Who knows how to fix a generator? Who has extra garden space? Who has tools? These are survival questions, and most people cannot answer them. There is a reason this video exists. It is not to scare you. Fear paralyzes, awareness prepares. The people of the Green Sahara did not know their world was dying. They had no scientists, no satellites, no climate models. The drought came as a surprise. They adapted anyway. But they could have adapted better if they had known what was coming. We have no excuse. We know the risks. We have the data. We have the models. We have the history. We know that Yellowstone is overdue. We know that Cascadia will go. We know that solar storms are inevitable. We know that supply chains are fragile. We know that most people are not prepared. We have the gift of awareness. The question is what we do with it. Do nothing. That is the easiest path. Stay comfortable. Stay distracted. Stay in denial. The probability of a catastrophe in your lifetime is low. You will probably be fine. Most people were fine before Toba, until they were not. Do something. That is the harder path. It takes effort, it takes time, it takes money, it takes uncomfortable conversations with your family. But it also gives you something: peace of mind. The knowledge that if something happens, you will not be caught completely off guard. Your ancestors had that peace. They knew how to survive because survival was their daily life. We can have that peace too, we just have to earn it. The choice is simple: do nothing and hope for the best, or do something and be ready for the worst. Hope is not a strategy, preparation is. The next video is already in production. It is about the catastrophes that almost happened, the ones that came close enough to touch us, and then missed. In 2012, a solar storm missed Earth by 9 days. If it had hit, it would have fried every transformer on the planet. No power for years. The modern world would have collapsed. We came within 9 days of that reality. Most people have never heard of it. In 2013, a 400-meter asteroid passed between the Earth and the Moon. We discovered it 3 days after it passed. If it had hit, the impact would have released the energy of thousands of nuclear bombs. We did not see it coming. In 1991, a Russian nuclear early warning system falsely detected an American missile launch. The officer on duty, Stanislav Petrov, decided to disobey orders and wait. He was right. The system had malfunctioned. One man's judgment saved the world. These are near misses. There are dozens of them: solar flares, asteroids, nuclear close calls, pandemics that fizzled, earthquakes that could have been worse. Each one a reminder that the line between civilization and collapse is thinner than we think. Each one a warning that we are not as safe as we assume. Each one a lesson in what goes wrong when we are not prepared. The next video will tell these stories, the ones you have never heard, the moments when humanity almost ended, and then by luck or by judgment did not. Subscribe now. Hit the bell. Because the next near miss might not miss. And when that happens, you will want to know what to do. Not after, before. Let us go back to the beginning. The Glomar Challenger drilled into the Mediterranean seabed in 1973. The scientists found salt. Salt that should not exist. Salt that told a story of a sea that had died and been reborn. That discovery opened a door. Behind it were 9 other catastrophes, each one different, each one devastating, each one forgotten. Toba, Doggerland, Storegga, the Black Sea, Lake Megachad. Thera, Younger Dryas, the 4.2 kiloyear event, 9 worlds that ended, 9 civilizations erased. 9 warnings that we ignored. The pattern is not complete. We are still in the stability phase. The sun is still shining. The crops are still growing. The cities are still full. But the triggers are still out there. The volcanoes are still sleeping. The comets are still orbiting. The climate is still shifting. And we are still not prepared. We are not the first advanced civilization to believe our world is permanent. We are just the ones who have been warned. The people of Doggerland did not have a warning. The people of the Green Sahara did not see it coming. The people of Akkad did not understand why their empire was dying. We have no excuse. The warning is here. It is in this video. It is in the sediment cores. It is in the ice cores. It is in the genetic bottleneck written into your own DNA. You have just spent over 2 hours walking through the worst moments in Earth's history. 10 disasters, each one powerful enough to erase civilizations. Each one leaving behind only fragments for scientists to find centuries or millennia later. You have stood at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea before it refilled. You have watched the sky turn black over Sumatra. You have seen Doggerland sink beneath the waves. You have felt the Storegga wave crash against shores that no longer exist. You have witnessed the Black Sea drown a homeland. You have watched the Sahara turn from green to dust. You have seen Thera explode and the Minoans fade. You have stood beneath the Younger Dryas comet as it set a continent on fire. And you have watched the 4.2 kiloyear event simultaneously destroy the most advanced civilizations on 3 continents. Now you are back in your chair, back in your room, back in a world that feels safe. But does it still feel safe? That is the question this video was designed to ask. Not to make you afraid. Fear paralyzes, awareness prepares. The people who survived Toba were not fearless. They were terrified. But they kept moving. They kept searching for food. They kept protecting their children. They did not curl up and wait for death. Neither should you. The difference between them and us is not courage. It is practice. They knew how to survive because they had no choice. We have forgotten. But forgetting is not permanent. We can remember. Think about your average day. You wake up. You turn on a light. You open a refrigerator. You drive a car. You look at a screen. Every single one of these actions depends on systems you do not understand. Electricity, refrigeration, fuel, the internet. If those systems vanish tomorrow, would you know how to find water? Would you know which wild plants are edible? Would you know how to start a fire without a lighter? How to build shelter without a hardware store? how to treat a wound without a pharmacy. Our ancestors knew all of these things. They taught their children. Their children taught their children. For 300,000 years, survival knowledge was the most valuable thing a person could own. Now, we outsource that knowledge to experts, to governments, to technology. And that works perfectly until it does not. The people of Doggerland thought their world was permanent. They had lived there for thousands of years. The sea had never risen that fast before. They were wrong. The people of the Green Sahara thought their lake would always be there. It had been there for 9,000 years, longer than all of recorded history. They were wrong. The people of the Akkadian Empire thought their fields would always produce. They had never seen a drought like the 4.2 kiloyear event. They were wrong. You are not smarter than the people of Doggerland. You are not more advanced than the Minoans. You are not more prepared than the Akkadians. You are just luckier so far. We like to tell ourselves a story, the story of progress. The idea that every generation is smarter, stronger, and better prepared than the one before. That history is a straight line upward from caves to cities to space travel. That the worst is behind us. That story is comforting. It is also false. The people of the Green Sahara had a civilization that lasted longer than all of recorded history. 9,000 years of stability. 9,000 years of painting happy scenes on cave walls. 9,000 years of believing their world would never end. Then the rains stopped, and their civilization collapsed so completely that we did not even know it existed until satellites spotted ancient riverbeds beneath the sand. Progress is not a guarantee. It is a temporary condition. Every civilization in history has assumed it would last forever. Every single one has been wrong. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Maya. The people of Easter Island who cut down their last tree and watched their world wash away. We are not special. We are not immune. We are just next. The only question is what will bring us down. A volcano, a comet, a climate shift, or something we have not even imagined yet. The 4.2 kiloyear event was not the worst drought in Earth's history. It was not the largest volcanic eruption. It was not the biggest tsunami. But it was the one that hit after we had built cities, after we had invented writing, after we thought we were safe. The next one will hit after we have built even more, after we have forgotten even more, after we are even less prepared. Let us name the threats we know about but do nothing about. Yellowstone, the supervolcano beneath America's most famous national park. It erupts roughly every 600,000 years. The last eruption was 640,000 years ago. We are overdue, not by a little, by 40,000 years. When Yellowstone erupts again, it will bury half of North America in ash. The rest of the world will freeze. Famine will be global, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. The Campi Flegrei volcano in Italy, the same caldera that erupted 39,000 years ago, is still active. Scientists monitor it constantly because they know it could erupt again. The ground around Naples rises and falls with the pressure of magma beneath it. Thousands of people live inside the caldera. They have no evacuation plan that would work on short notice. The Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of the Pacific Northwest produces a magnitude 9 earthquake every 300 years on average. The last one was in 1700. That was 324 years ago. When it goes, Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver will be destroyed in minutes. The tsunami will cross the ocean and hit Japan. The region has building codes. It has warning systems. It does not have a culture of preparedness. Most people living there do not know they are in a tsunami zone. The Tohoku Fault off the coast of Japan produces a massive earthquake every 400 to 600 years. The last one was in 2011. That one killed 20,000 people and caused a nuclear meltdown. The next one could be worse. We know these things. We have maps, models, warning systems. But we do not prepare, because preparing is expensive, because preparing is scary, because we would rather believe it will not happen in our lifetime. The people of Pompeii believe the same thing. Here is something that should keep you awake. NASA has identified only about 40% of near-Earth objects larger than 140 meters. Objects big enough to destroy a city. Objects that could hit us with no warning. The Chelyabinsk meteor that exploded over Russia in 2013 was only 20 meters across. It injured 1,500 people. It broke windows in 6 cities. It was not detected before it entered the atmosphere. Imagine if it had been larger. Imagine if it had been the size of the younger Dryas comet. Imagine if it hit New York instead of open ocean. The dinosaurs did not see the asteroid that killed them. They had no warning, no evacuation plan, no backup. Neither do we. We have telescopes, we have computer models. We have brilliant scientists tracking the sky every night. But space is big, really big, and comets are dark. Some of them we will not see until they are months away. Some of them we will not see until they hit. The younger Dryas impact hypothesis remains debated, partly because we have not found a crater. A comet that size should leave a hole. But if it exploded over the ice sheet, the crater might be buried under kilometers of ice that have since melted and reformed. We may never find it. The next comet could be on the same trajectory. We would not know until the sky lit up. The next great extinction could already be on its way. It could be a decade out, a year out, a day out. We would not know until it was too late. That is not fear-mongering. That is physics. But let us stop looking at the sky for a moment. Let us look at each other. Because the most likely catastrophe is not a volcano or a comet. It is us, nuclear war, engineered pandemics, uncontrolled artificial intelligence, climate collapse. These are not science fiction. These are active risks that experts have been warning about for decades. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist maintains the doomsday clock. It represents how close humanity is to destroying itself. Right now, it is set at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been. Closer than during the Cold War. Closer than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We have normalized this. We scroll past headlines about nuclear posturing and climate tipping points like they are sports scores. We have accepted a 90 seconds to midnight world as normal. It is not normal. It is insane. The people of the Green Sahara did not see their drought coming. We see ours coming. We just refuse to look. The difference between the 4.2 kill-a-year event and tomorrow is awareness. The Bronze Age civilizations did not know why their crops failed. They did not have satellites. They did not have climate models. They prayed to gods who did not answer. We have no excuse. We know exactly what is happening. We have known for decades, and we have done almost nothing. The difference between survival and extinction is not ability, it is will, and our will is failing. But the question is not whether we can stop the next catastrophe. The question is whether we will even try. This is not a political video. This is not a lecture. This is a survival guide. And here is the first rule of survival. Do not panic. Panic kills faster than any disaster. The people who survived Toba did not panic. They assessed. They adapted. They acted. You can do the same. Start small. Learn one skill this week. How to find water. How to start a fire without a lighter. How to treat a wound. One skill. Practice it until it becomes automatic. Then learn another. Here is a specific list for the first 24 hours after a catastrophe. Water. You can survive 3 weeks without food. You can survive 3 days without water. Water is priority 1. Learn 3 ways to find it. Learn 3 ways to purify it. Learn where the nearest natural water source is to your home. Shelter. Exposure kills faster than hunger. Learn how to insulate a small space. Learn how to layer clothing. Learn how to build a fire in wet conditions. Food. Start with what you already have. Take an inventory of your pantry. How many days of food do you actually have? Most people have less than 2 weeks. Build that to 1 month, then 3 months, then 6. First aid. Learn how to stop bleeding. Learn how to treat burns. Learn how to set a broken bone. These skills take hours to learn. They could save your life or someone else's. Start tonight. Not next week. Not when you have time. Tonight. Because the people of Pompeii thought they had time. They did not. Once you have the first 24 hours covered, move to the next 30 days. Communication. If the cell towers go down, how will you get information? A battery-powered radio. A hand crank radio. A list of emergency frequencies. Know how to use them before you need them. Community. Talk to your neighbors. Not about politics. About survival. Who has medical training? Who has extra garden space? Who has tools? Who has a generator? Who has children or elderly relatives who might need help? Make a plan, not a complicated plan. A simple plan. If X happens, we meet at Y. If we cannot meet, we leave a message at Z skills. Take a first aid class. Take a CPR class. Take a wilderness survival class. These are not expensive. They are not time-consuming. They are life-saving. Knowledge is the only thing that cannot be taken from you. Supplies. Build a go bag. A backpack with enough supplies for 72 hours. Water, food, first aid, light, fire, shelter. Copies of important documents. Cash. A change of clothes. Keep it by the door. Practice grabbing it in the dark. Practice getting out of your house in under 5 minutes. The people of Akrotiri evacuated before Thera erupted because they were ready. Not because they were lucky, because they were prepared. The people of Doggerland were not prepared. The water rose. The wave came. Their homes are now under 40 meters of cold North Sea water. Do not be the people of Doggerland. There is a reason most people do not prepare. It is not laziness. It is not stupidity. It is psychological defense. Preparing for a catastrophe forces you to imagine the catastrophe, to picture your home destroyed, your family injured, your world collapsed. That is uncomfortable. The brain avoids discomfort. So the brain tells itself stories. It will not happen here. It will not happen to me. It will not happen now. The people of the Green Sahara told themselves those same stories. The rains will return, the lake will refill. Our world is permanent, they were wrong. The people of the Akkadian Empire told themselves the same stories. Our empire is too strong to fall, our army is too powerful to defeat, our gods will protect us. They were wrong. The only way to defeat this psychological defense is to reframe preparedness. Not as fear, as freedom. When you have a go bag, you are not afraid of the dark. You are ready for it. When you have skills, you are not afraid of uncertainty. You are equipped for it. When you have community, you are not afraid of isolation. You are connected. Preparedness is not about dwelling on the worst. It is about being able to stop dwelling on it because you have already done something about it. The people who survived the 8.2 kiloyear event were not the ones who panicked. They were the ones who had already dug the canals, who had already stored the grain, who had already made the plan. The time to prepare is not when you see the smoke. It is not when you feel the tremor. It is not when you hear the warning. The time to prepare is now, because when the warning comes, it will already be too late to start. Let us go back to the beginning. The Glomar Challenger drilled into the Mediterranean seabed in 1973. The scientists found salt. Salt that should not exist. Salt that told a story of a sea that had died and been reborn. That discovery opened a door. Behind it were 9 other catastrophes: Toba, Doggerland, Storegga, the Black Sea, Lake Megachad, Thera, Younger Dryas, the 4.2 kiloyear event, each one different. Each one devastating. Each one forgotten. The people who lived through them did not have historians. They did not have cameras. They had memory, and even that faded. The survivors eventually died. Their children moved on. Their grandchildren forgot. And the world moved on without remembering what had been lost. We are not the first advanced civilization to believe our world is permanent. We are just the ones who have been warned. The pattern is not complete. We are still in the stability phase. The sun is still shining. The crops are still growing. The cities are still full. But the triggers are still out there. The volcanoes are still sleeping. The comets are still orbiting. The climate is still shifting. And we are still not prepared. The only question is whether you will listen, whether you will learn, whether you will prepare, whether you will be one of the survivors or one of the forgotten. The sky turned black on a Tuesday. Not that they had names for days yet, but it happened suddenly, and it will happen again. The only difference is this time we have no excuse to say we did not know. Stay awake, stay aware, stay alive. The next video is about the near misses, the catastrophes that almost happened. The solar storm of 2012, the asteroid of 2013, the nuclear false alarm of 1991. You will not want to miss it. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and remember, the ground is never as still as you think. The sky is never as safe as it looks. And the only thing that has ever saved us is paying attention.